Aaron Rodgers came out with the Will Smith, keep my coach's name out of your mouth to Sean Payton. Brinson, what Sean Payton said was a little aggressive. He said what everybody's been thinking. He said, I had my Fox cap still on. Probably shouldn't have said that about a former coach. However, no lies were told as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. And Rodgers had a pretty aggressive comeback to it. What do you make of this drama?
Yeah, so Payton's comments were, who was he talking to? Oh, he's talking to Jarrett Bell of USA Today. Sorry. And he went nuclear. He basically, to me, so this is my biggest takeaway from this is that Sean Payton was attempting to shift the blame from Russell Wilson to absolve Russell Wilson of blame for the 2022 Broncos season and basically to completely bomb Nathaniel Hackett under the bus and to pin all of the issues of the Broncos last year on Hackett, some on the front office, which Breech will touch on, I think, and basically say this wasn't Russ. So to me, I'm a little intrigued by the Broncos because of this. Now, I think it was stupid to do all that. You didn't need to do it the way he did. He kind of got some stuff out there and then just kept spilling his freaking guts and like ripping the Jets. He's like, trust me, like there was no need to rip the Jets. You can rip Nathaniel Hackett. Like Robert Saleh and saying like, oh, they're on Hard Knocks, like they're gonna suck this year because they're on hard. It's like all of that was wildly unnecessary. The stuff about, to me though, about the Broncos stuff specifically, and talking about Hackett versus Russ, it says to me that he believes that he can get good stuff out of Russell Wilson here because he is propping Russ up. It was one of two things. Either he believes Russ is good to go and that he's going to have a bounce back season, or he thinks Russ is like psychologically soft and needs to be propped up because of that, or Russ won't stop. Like it could be one. It could be either or. If the Russ thing doesn't work out, guess who's getting this treatment next offseason? Russell. Sean Payton's going to do the same because he's going to need to move the blame around. He's not going to take it. He's in a win-win. We've talked about this. So I think makes me a little bullish on the Broncos just because it makes me believe that Sean Payton Breech, who despite what he said about his GM, believes that Russell Wilson can be successful this year.
Yeah, I don't think Sean Payton makes these comments unless he actually thinks this team is going to be good. And I think one of the comments that got kind of glossed over was that he said he's going to be pissed if this team doesn't make the playoffs. That's how confident he is. And if they do make the playoffs, that completely validates his point that Nathaniel Hackett has no idea what he's doing. And the thing is, it was weird to hear an NFL head coach say this, but this is stuff that everyone in the country was writing when Nathaniel Hackett got fired last year. Hey, look, this guy can't coach. He has no idea what he's doing. And it was weird, obviously, to hear a head coach regurgitate that. But and as Brinson just said, an even weirder part here was that Payton threw his front office under the bus. I mean, that was, to me, the weirdest part. Look, you want to say Hackett was horrible last year? I don't know why that's a big deal because he was. I mean, The way he said it, probably he went a little bit overboard. But you can't sit there and say, hey, look, it wasn't completely Russell Wilson's fault. It was the head coach's fault. It was the general manager's fault. And it was the president of the team's fault. Well, guess what? The general manager's still there. The president of the team is still there. The president of the team just got hired last August. He was handpicked by the new owners. So you're already throwing the new owner's lackey under the bus? That is not how you want to start your career off, Sean Payton. I know he feels pretty good. There's no way, he can ever be in the doghouse with ownership, but man, that is not what you want to do your first 6 months in the building. So I thought that was the most fascinating part of his comments.
Yeah, I saw that article and I was like, that's the John Breech story. And of course it was a John Breech story on CBSSports.com. You can check it out there. I think one of the things that's interesting about the GM and the president stuff is it tells me that Sean Payton reports to the ownership. Sean Payton wasn't hired by George Patton, right? Or George Payton. Sean Payton wasn't hired by the front office. Sean Payton was hired by the ownership. That's who he answers to. And that's how it was for him in New Orleans ultimately. I mean, Mickey Loomis was the GM and technically his boss, but I mean, I think, the Brinsons were who both Sean and Mickey answered to separately, even if it was unspoken. And so the other thing is Payton is potentially setting this up for, if they aren't good, one, you have Russ as a possible scapegoat. You also have the GM and the president as a possible scapegoat. And you are undermining the two guys who, in every NFL team, at some point, there's a power struggle in the front office, right? I mean, almost universally doesn't matter who it is. Like even like Pete Carroll and John Schneider, their like level of authority and what certain powers they have has changed over the years. Like their success gave John Schneider more cachet, even though they came as a partnership. Sean McDermott, Brandon Beane, same sort of thing. But in some organizations, when a new coach comes in, there's massive power shifts, right? And that's like Sean Payton wants to hire his own GM. Like that is just like obvious. And so I think what we'll see is maybe a little bit more of this, maybe him like mentioning the personnel issues or stuff like that, because eventually he's going to get to a spot where he wants to be able to hire his own GM. And so I think that's interesting from that perspective.
It's a wild way to start a job, and Sean Payton better win, because all of these comments are going to come back to haunt him if he doesn't. And Brinson, I think it's interesting what you brought up about Russell Wilson maybe being a little bit soft. I mean, can we really take that out of the equation? The reports from the locker room and how he felt about himself and how his teammates felt about him, it's not all positive. And I don't think that anybody has the confidence that Russ can really cook. So I can see, as a coach, trying to kind of overcorrect in that way, that he's going to be this big superstar that we saw in Seattle, as a way to try to kind of help his quarterback through, I guess the equivalent of the yips is what he went through last.
By the way, these two teams, the Jets and the Jets, like, I mean, if I'm Aaron Rodgers and the Jets, I'm like, cool. Thanks for the like wildly unnecessary drive-by, and then allows us to get a chip on our shoulder, like, and to be like, oh, you think like another team, like a possible Hall of Fame like worthy coach is like basically saying the Jets are going to suck because they're on Hard Knocks. Like the Jets are going to be chippy about this, and these two teams play in Week 5.
And Aaron Rodgers literally thrives on having a chip on his shoulder. That is when he is at his best. Oh, look, you wouldn't start me because you had Brett Favre. I win a Super Bowl in 2010. Oh, look, you draft Jordan Love. I win 2 straight MVPs. Yep. Oh, now Sean Payton is saying my offensive coordinator sucks and that the whole team is washed up and you're making us the laughing stock of the league. Well, guess what? We're going to beat you 49-7 in Week 5. So, I mean, Aaron Rodgers is not the guy you want to make mad.